Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for our second week of the new coffee table book. So we are making a coffee table book to put memories in. We can have our friends fill them out, our family, we can do them ourselves. We can use a combination and let everyone fill them out as they wish. So what we did the first week was just choose our book and decide how we were going to remove the papers. And I showed you how to remove the papers from your signatures. So I'm going to show you here while this is drying. I dry between every couple of pages that I've glued together. And when I do that, I put the old pieces, the pieces that I took out, I put those back in there so that my book is solid. Because without those in there, so if we look at it this way, see the pages, see it's solid. So that as you're letting it sit there with something heavy on top, and it doesn't have to be real heavy, just something to kind of hold it. All of that is pushing, all the pages are pushing against each other. Because once we take all of these pages out, take those out and set those aside because I will continue using those. It makes for a very nice to hold your pages against, because as you look at it this way, these pages are not solid against each other. See how wide we are here and how close we are here? So if we were to just set something at, close it and set something on it like this, there's no real contact in this area till you start getting towards the middle. You get some, and then you get a nice real heavy contact right here along the edge. But we want the whole thing to dry nice and flat. So we just take these and just shove a few of them in every few pages. So what I've done is, as we went through the first time and I took out some of the signatures, I finished taking out all of the signatures, and the way that I took them out was I did leave the first and last page of the signature and took out everything else. And even at that, I forget, it's a lot of pages. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 13 pages in here. So that is a lot of pages. So that's plenty for me. And so what I've done is I've went through and I have glued every 2 pages together, leaving the center of the signature where the stitching is, because that's where it will lie the flattest. Because if we're going to go back here to the ones that are not glued yet, I'm going to show you how I glued them. And but these two the last 2 pages are not glued together yet. So we have the center of the signature here, and this lies nice and flat. Between the 2 signatures, well, I have sanded on this so it's a little flatter than it was, but this does not lay as flat because these 2 pages are actually glued together. So you want to leave where your signature is sewn. We're going to leave that, and we're going to glue the last page of one signature and the first page of the next. And we're going to glue those together. So wherever the pages were glued right here along the edge and still are a little bit, and they just don't lay as flat. That's why this is actually ripped right here, because we're gluing it together, it doesn't matter. But, so what I did after I got all of my extra pages out, this is what I want to glue together. So I just used some plain sandpaper and just sanded along the center on both pages and all the way around, all the way around the edges. And then I just did the center here and here and here, just a little, because this paper is not real glossy, but it's also not matte. It's not just regular paper that doesn't have any coating on it. So I wanted it to stick together fairly well. And because of other things we'll be doing, like paper clipping and maybe putting edges of tape or something down the edges, it doesn't have to be totally perfect, and I did not want it real wet and getting real wrinkly. So I decided to use this as just a permanent glue stick. And like I said, we'll be doing other things to it. And then I just went ahead and I glued down the center and around the edges and in those places where I sanded, and then just a few extra swipes across there. But you do want to make sure that you get the edges well. That's important. And you want to get that center well too. And then just a few extras. And then we're going to take those 2 pages and bring them together. Start from the bottom and then bring them up. And then I'm going to shut my book a little bit, because if you can see how they cascade, the pages cascade here. So we're not getting an exact, we want these 2 pages to line up exactly. And they're going to cascade the 2 of them a little bit off if we have the book wide open. So I'm going to kind of close it a little bit and push those 2 pages together. And then I'm going to turn it over the other way. And again, kind of close it a little bit, just because I want the outside edge of that paper to be as close as it can to each other, so that the 2 of them are nice and lined up. So there's that one. And again, sand the whole thing. And I did kind of sand, because those were kind of glued together when I sanded it. It made a little bit of a hole there, but that's all right, because we're going to glue the 2 pages together. And if it was just really bad where I felt I couldn't use it, I could take those 2 pages out. So there's never anything that you can't fix. Creating something is supposed to be about your creativity, just wanting to do it. It's not about how perfect you are. You know, it is literally just about enjoying the fact of doing what you're doing. So don't worry about what anybody else is doing or how they're doing it or how theirs looks. Just have a good time doing your own. And that's really what it's all about. So again, I should have pulled those up together before I did this, but I didn't, so I'm not going to try and peel them apart. Okay, and then what you're going to want to do is take a piece of parchment, and I would do like 2 or 3 pages, and then I would go ahead and set them aside. I don't have another piece of parchment right here. There we go. Now I do. It's going to be noisy for a minute, because I'm going to keep half of it for the next part of this project. So I would glue 2 or 3 pages, like I would glue 2 pages together like this, but I would do like 2 or 3 of these new pages, and then just put the parchment between them. I don't know what I did with my other pieces of parchment. Actually, I need one here too. And then again, I'm going to take a few of these pages, stick some of this in here, stick some up here towards the front, gonna stick some in the back. And there we go. That will kind of even that book out. And I would do 2 or 3 every morning before I went to work. And then I would just let them sit till the next morning, and I would, you know, glue 2 or 3 more sets together. So now they're all glued together. Those were the last 2 that I wanted to just leave so I could show you how I did them. And so then I was trying to decide, what am I going to exactly do with the pages? Because they are a little bit slick. Even with my permanent glue stick, I can kind of, I don't know what I want to say. And now the drier it is, actually they're even better. They kind of felt a little bit like they might be separating. I didn't have any that were actually separating. I just felt like they kind of might be. So then I was trying to decide, you know, we're going to have to cover these with something. So what do I want to cover them with? Do I want to cover them with scrapbooking paper? I've never really actually used scrapbooking paper in any of my journals. I usually use my own homemade paper or homemade paper. So I was just trying to figure out, how do I really want to do it? And I think, I'm not sure, but but the one thing that I do know is no matter what, I'm going to have to glue something down to this paper. And so I decided, what do I want to do? And there's two ways you can do it. You can give the whole thing a sand, and after you've sanded it, take a damp paper towel, literally just barely damp, and then just wipe that sanding dust off, because otherwise your glue's not going to stick even though you've sanded it. So you can sand it or you can gesso it. So I have gessoed this first page. And I just have some gesso here. This is not homemade gesso. It is, I bought a gallon of gesso, and it was like somebody had dropped it kind of like on its lid, so it was broken at the top. But I could tell by moving it, it was hard around the very top, but I could tell by moving it back and forth that it was still very liquid. So I came home and put, I think I wound up with like 10 of these little glass jars, or maybe even more than that. I wound up with a lot of gesso that way. So, and I got it very reasonable because the top of it was broken. So always remember, you never, you know, don't always bypass something just because it may not look pristine. Besides, to me, having them in these jars, well, I've had this for probably at least 7 or 8 years. And that's not even kidding or exaggerating. And it is all still because I put them in here. I put plastic wrap over the top, and then I put the lid on, and I do that for 2 reasons. Number 1, I feel like it seals better. And number 2, because if this is on here and then you put the lid on, the lid will release because it's not stuck with the paint to the other part of the jar. So that way I can get the lid off much easier. That works really well with anything that's kind of gluey also. So what I'm going to do then is, and I will tell you that when I did this one, I don't know if you can yet, you can see how it's wrinkled. So because the gesso is wet, even though I didn't use wet glue, and if you look at this page, look at how nice and smooth that is and how flat that is. Not wrinkled at all, because I used a dry glue, which is what I consider this to be. It didn't wrinkle. So if you don't want any wrinkles, then you're going to want to just give it a light sand so that whatever you glue to it will stick to it. I don't mind the wrinkles. To me, it just gives it character. I like the feel of things, always have, so the wrinkles don't bother me, and I am going to go with the, and it's not quite as wrinkled as it was when I first did it. So, but yeah, I didn't want to have the wrinkles and then more wrinkles on top. So I did do the first part with the stick glue, and I kind of wanted to show you how that would work too. Now, like I said, make sure you sand it and that is a permanent stick glue. If you use like Elmer's Kids Glue, here's my paper towel, that's not going to hold it, because that is a water-based, washable, and this one might even be washable, but this one says permanent right on it, and you do want a permanent glue stick. Now, you can use Elmer's. This is Elmer's Craft Bond Extra Strength Glue Stick, and this is a permanent bond. That's what you want to look for. So they don't say not permanent, but the ones that are permanent do say that they're permanent. And instead of like getting a little bit on my brush, you know, to me, it's just easier to pour it out, or even because this is so thick, just scoop some of it out onto the paper, because I'm impatient. And I'm going to take the first page that I took out whole, and I'm going to put this here so that I don't make a mess all over the pages underneath. They're all going to get gessoed also, but, and then, no, they probably are all going to get gessoed. I do like the gesso as a prep. I was going to say maybe I won't do all of them with gesso. Maybe I'll just sand some, but you know how to sand a piece of paper if you want to. And so you don't need to see me do that. And I really would prefer the gessoed little bit of a wrinkle to my paper. Now, after I did this, I did hit it a little bit with my heat gun to dry it a bit. I let it sit for a little bit, and then I went ahead and closed the book and put something heavy on top of it. And when I say heavy, I put a couple of punches on it. You know, so punches do have some weight to them, but I'm not talking anything super heavy. So I'm going to kind of pick up the edge of that, because I'm now going to switch to over here and kind of line it up a little bit so I don't get a bunch of paint onto the other page, although the other page already has the gesso on it, so it's not going to hurt anything. I just don't want to get it real sticky. And after it dries a little bit, then I will put parchment. I won't put parchment while it's wet, because it won't stick. It will still come off, but it will kind of stick and maybe peel up a little bit of the paper where it has bubbled, or peel up some of the paint, and I don't want that to happen. So, and I know that you can't see the very edge over here, but it's the same as that one. So I'm just going to cover the whole thing. And I do like to, after it's covered, to kind of make sure that my lines are going the same way, I guess is the way I'd want to say it. This edge is not very good. Pick up some of the gesso from over here and put it on here. But I do like to just kind of go back and forth like this, instead of having it all mixed up. That, again, is another preference. You may want it all kind of mixed up. And I like the gesso in case I decide that I want to just maybe put some spray on it, or put some paint on it or something like that. And that's kind of why I like my lines a little bit straight. But if you went all over and put some spray on it, you would get all of that texture with your spray. So that's another kind of cool way to do things. I just like to kind of let you know that there's lots of different ways to do whatever it is that we're doing. You don't have to have what other people have. And I can tell you, before I bought this, this was an actual artist grade gesso. Before I bought that, I bought a smaller thing of like Kills, which is a primer for your walls. And it was reasonable, and it is basically the same thing as gesso as far as I'm concerned. I don't make pieces that are made to last for a million years. I don't worry about whether things are acid free or whether it's the proper thing to use, because I'm really doing it just for the joy of doing it. And maybe giving someone else joy of having it once I'm done. But, so you don't have to have all the most expensive stuff in order to create. Now, the thing is I don't want to stick this back on here. Well, I guess I can, because it's not ripped. Sometimes they rip a little bit, and if they do rip, then the gesso kind of comes out through that rip and gets on your lid and makes it hard to get off. The older I get, the more I find that it's hard to remove lids and that type of thing. The other nice thing about this is the size of this lid is a lot easier for my hands versus a jar that has a bigger lid on it. Something to think about when you're saving jars also. So there we go. We now have this, and it needs to sit and dry. And as soon as it's not tacky to the touch, I will stick a piece of parchment between it, shut the whole book, and put something on top of it and let it set. Right now, I'm just going to set it aside. The only reason I dried it a little bit with my heat gun was because I was impatient. I had to leave for work, and so I wanted to get the book shut before I left. So you can let it sit and dry. You don't have to partially dry it. You can let it sit for a while till it's kind of dry, and then stick the parchment in and shut it. Try and put this somewhere. Put that up there. So, and then another thing. So I'm going to work through this week trying to get as much of it prepared with the gesso as possible. Now, we don't have to have the whole book done in order to start on pages. So next week we'll start figuring out what we're going to do with the first or second page. And but I want to show you something else that I was doing because I wanted something to do one morning. And so I made a bunch of journaling cards. Now, I just did the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and I've just pulled out a couple pieces. This is like one piece of cardstock, and I just kind of lined them up and used different colors of ink and went ahead and made, I think, 5 out of each color. So I've got a circle with a straight line. I've got the circle with the swirl. I think these are really fun. I'm going to show you how I did it. I'm not going to make one, but I'll show you how I did it. But I like these because you can start at the edge or in the center. I usually start in the center, so I know if I've run out of room. But you start writing, and you just keep writing and writing and writing all the way around. And I think it's really fun. And so then I just have some other different shapes and different type of lines. So I made these. Whether I'll use them or not, I don't know. But I just thought it would be nice to have some kind of ready to put in the book. And it was something, I wanted to do something. And so this is what I did. But the other thing is that as we're going through the book and we're getting to where we need to stick tags into pockets, we will do something with the back. You know, we will put pictures on them, we'll stamp on them, we'll do something with the back. I just went ahead and got all of the journaling writing spaces done. And then we will take the back sides and we'll glue magazine pictures, book pictures, pictures we've drawn, pictures we've stamped. Maybe we'll collage. And another thing that I did was I just did a collage. Pulled out a bunch of scrap papers, collaged. I'll iron this because it is wrinkly. If it doesn't get to where I think it can be written on, then after I iron it, I will put a flatter piece of paper on it. To me, it's really not that bad already, so when I iron it, it should make it flatter to use it for a journaling card. I don't like journaling cards to be too wrinkly. But yeah, just scrap papers, so I did that. I'm not sure if I did that this week or last week. And then I'll show you my stamps. So these are, you can just take, now, these are double-sided sticky. And some of you may have the double-sided sticky, you know, that you bought in some of the kits that I had way back when. I don't think I'll have those again. I don't know, but you don't need double-sided sticky. Just a piece of cardboard and some glue. And then, so just put your glue on there. Let it get just a little bit tacky. And then this is fun foam. And so this was a straight piece of fun foam, and I just stuck it on there like this, and then put a little bit of powder, because if you have some double-sided sticky or even single-sided sticky, you can use that to stick it to, so that it holds the fun foam the second that you put it down. And that's why I said maybe put some glue down and let it get a little bit tacky before you put this down, and then, you know, you have to hold it a little bit. But so this one is just, this is fun foam, and this is fun foam cut straight. You can cut it as thick or as thin as you want it, but it's hard to get it super thin. So I also like to use twine. This is just plain twine, just like this. And I just put glue, and this one has straight lines on it. Just put some glue on there on a piece of cardboard, and just take it and stick them down like this. And, well, you'd have to, you know. And once you get the stuck on there, let it dry, and then cut your edges off of your cardboard. So don't put it on there with your glue and then try and cut it, because that moves it. Wait till it's dry and then cut off your edges. It's much better. So, and then here's just a round piece with straight lines, and then again, and this was a round piece. And because I have to end somewhere and I don't like to bring it back, I just end it, and then I kind of, when I go to cut it, when I put it on the cardboard and go to cut it out, I just kind of cut it around this way so that I don't have a big piece of cardboard sticking out here that might touch my paper. But yeah, that's just like that. And so you just take your glue and put it around like this, let it get just a little bit tacky. Then take your twine, and that's what this one is. And just take your twine and stick it on there. You're going to want to make sure that it's not too fuzzy at the end. Cut it off nice and flush, and then stick it down. And then just take your twine and stick it on the glue, just like this, and then let it set till the glue dries. And then it will be ready to go. Now, because you're going to stamp with them, that's going to get it wet again. So I say wait 24 hours. Wait overnight at least to let them dry before you actually use them. It's tempting. It's so tempting to use them right away. But if you let things dry before you use them, you have such a better quality stamp when you're done. So, and you can also use cardboard. Let's see. Here's a piece of very thin cardboard. I have to say this doesn't work really well with a really, really thin cardboard, and that's because it's so thin that the lines are so close together, you would have to write really, really, really tiny. But regular corrugated cardboard, peel off one side of it, and, and then just use it to put handles on the back, and, put ink on it or paint on it, and then stamp it down, and you have that's a really nice width of lines is regular corrugated cardboard. I thought this would be really cool because there'd be way more lines, but they're just way too close together. So I'll use this for something else. But that is what I've done this week. I was working on getting my pages glued together and getting it figured out whether I was going to gesso or sand, and then making some tags so that I would have tags to maybe play with when I'm ready to put tags into the book. So, and again, this is just something I was playing with. I don't know whether I'll use these or whether as I go, it'd be like, no, I want this one to be brown paper sack, and I want this one to be cardboard or whatever. I want it to be regular copy paper and collaged with old scraps. So, you can make them all different ways. But this is what I did to start with, and a good way to make your own line stamps, because it's nice to have some lines, but it also will be nice to have some cards in there that don't have lines, because somebody might want to sketch a little doodle or something. And so you're going to want those to be plain. And you don't have to have color. White is fine, or tan, or, like paper sack color. Craft, I guess they call that craft card. But, you can make them any colors you want to. Like I said, I'm not really a bright person. So, I made them and I did the rainbow colors. And after I did, I thought, that's kind of bright. I'm not so sure if that's going to be something I want to use or not. But we'll find out when the time comes. It's just going to be when we do the page, what matches. Is a color going to match, or what's going to match? So, that's it for this week. Let's gesso our pages, sand our pages. Sanding them will be quicker as far as you don't have to wait for them to dry. That's why I don't know if I'll get mine all gessoed this week or not, because really doing a double, like we just did, doing both sides, and then being able to shut it, letting it dry a little bit, I might only be able to do one set of those every morning, and I have more than 7 sets. So we'll see how far I got those next week when I come back. But next week, we're going to work on the first page. Whatever that may be, that's what we're going to do next week. I haven't even thought that far ahead. So thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. I hope that you're going to enjoy this coffee table book. I think they're going to be so cool to have around the house once we get them done. So, or even as a gift, I think that they're going to be pretty neat. So thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. And I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.